International EBA Community of Practice Workshop. The title this year is Moving Forward, New Horizons and Synergies for EBA. So good morning here from Germany, but in Asia it's already in the afternoon, and I think we also have some early birds from the western part of the world. So welcome everyone, it's great to see you. Thanks for making the effort to join. For those who are new, I would like to show you a little bit around the platform so you understand how this conference works. If you imagine we're in a conference hall, so this is our virtual conference hall, and you've probably all already participated in the platform that we have. I'm just going to share my screen here. 1 second, here we go. So here is the platform. This is our main conference hall. You've probably found out where the agenda is right at the top. Today we've got lots and lots of great input and actually opportunity for interaction. So we'll be starting with some keynotes that I'll introduce in a minute. After that, we have a marketplace where you have the opportunity to move around like in a market and check out a few different market stalls. So we have quite a lot there, which is exciting. And then we have 2 breakout sessions. So breakouts are basically, they're Microsoft Teams sessions. So they're an opportunity for you to also interact. And we have 2 sessions of about an hour in the afternoon where you can really dive deep into the topics that you're interested in. Perhaps something else to point out. Now here you can check out the participants. It's always interesting who's there. I found someone who I'd met years ago in Kazakhstan this morning. So you can contact people, you can write to them, you can chat. So it's a nice opportunity. Perhaps there's someone where you think, you wouldn't normally send an email, but since you're on the platform, it's nice to say hello. There's also the matchmaking process. So you'll see here best matches. This is based on what you had entered when you entered into the platform when you entered the platform. If you want to change that by any chance, you feel, oh, actually, I forgot to mention this and that, you can click on your profile here at the top and go edit profile, and it takes you through the same place. I would also like to mention the media wall here. So the media wall is something where you can already find a lot of great presentations, YouTube videos. And as you can see here, it says new. This is also participants sharing. So this is not only the conference organizers, but any of you who have something to share. This is a community of practice. Please do so. The others will really appreciate it. Great. And in the modern world, people are also in social media. So there are some hashtags here that you can use. And if you use those hashtags, then your tweet will appear automatically here in this Twitter wall. So that's a nice feature. The marketplace is for the session later on when we have a marketplace. I'll explain that in more detail then, just in case you're wondering what this is. We'll refer to that later on. Last but not least, I'll mention this again at the end of our conference, but if you need to drop out earlier, we would really appreciate your feedback. As you can see, it's very straightforward. It'll just take you a few minutes to let us know what you appreciated and what you will need in the future. Okay, I think that's enough in terms of the platform. I'll just stop sharing that. And now it would be so nice to hear from some participants. So we have 2 volunteers who would share with us some impressions from yesterday. So thanks a lot, Rupa Shrestha and Jihan Adil, for joining us. So perhaps I'll start with you, Jihan. What are your impressions from yesterday? How did you experience it?
Well, good evening, everyone from the Philippines. I am very happy to be once again participate in this year's workshop. So I was very happy and very inspired to know that there are a lot of developments on EBA. Although, of course, the issue of that proper terminology to use is still there, but at least what's inspiring is that it's already being implemented, and there are already evidences of success. Yesterday, I also participated in the breakout session of Panorama, and I learned that there are a lot of materials that we can pick up from and learn from in that particular platform. So I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to join. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jihan. Great. Rupesh, what about you? How was your day yesterday?
Hello, Tina. Hello, Jihan. So nice to see you. Hello, everybody. So I'm from Nepal, but right now I'm a research fellow at TU Kaiserslautern, Germany. So good morning. Yesterday it was quite nice. It was my first time in COP this year, this month. So it was quite knowledgeable, and I met a lot of people, and I felt like there's a community which I can look forward to. And if I have any questions, I will, of course, drop questions to them. And then I was also in Panorama breakout session, and I learned a lot about the knowledge base that already exists, and I guess I can benefit, and I hope to contribute to the solutions maybe sometime in future. And I was also in urban EBA, so you said we have new horizons and new synergies with this theme, and I guess urban EBA is one horizon or where we can have synergy, and a lot of opportunity exists, as I'm an architect, so I want to contribute there as well. And then I had just briefly was in a funding EBA breakout session, so I'm looking forward to again look into all the links that were shared yesterday. Yeah. Very productive.
Great. Thanks a lot, both of you. Yeah, and I think that really highlights how valuable it is to have this community of practice. I was in a networking session yesterday on monitoring and evaluation, and people were also referring to booklets that have already existed for 3-4 years, but not everybody knows them, and people come in new into the community. So this sharing of knowledge and experiences, and also, I guess, storytelling is something that's really valuable. And of course, it would be so nice to meet in person, but at the same time, I think the virtual conferences also offer an opportunity perhaps for more people to participate who might not have otherwise been able to travel. So yeah, so thanks a lot, both of you, and I wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Great. Then I would like to hand over to Harald Lossack from GIZ for some opening words. So Harald is the head of the global project mainstreaming ecosystem-based adaptation, strengthening EBA and planning and decision-making processes. Harald has served as a cluster coordinator of GIZ's biodiversity program in Mexico from 2018 to 2021. And previously, he headed the Competence Center on Biodiversity, Forests, and Natural Resources within GIZ's Division of Environment and Climate Change. Prior to that, Harald has coordinated the GIZ-supported pilot program for the conservation of tropical rainforests in Brazil. He has degrees in development sociology and political science from the Free University of Berlin. Harald, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tina, and a very warm welcome from my side to this session on nature-based solutions for adaptation. The term or the topic nature-based solutions has experienced an increasing focus in international climate and biodiversity negotiations. At the same time, we face a very polarized debate. It hasn't been possible to introduce the term into the final document of COP26 in Glasgow. And there seems to be a certain resistance of some parties to incorporate NBS into the ongoing discussions on the global biodiversity framework. So what we would like to do here today is advance a little bit more on the concept of NBS and the discussion we are facing at this moment. Often we find a focus on mitigation, but NBS is a much broader concept, not only carbon sequestration in trees. Large potentials exist, especially for adaptation. In our view, as a global project, which is also shared by our ministries and the IKI, as well as by IUCN and many others, we consider NBS for adaptation as being the same as EBA, so that you can use both terms in a synonymous way. anyone who is implementing EBA measures is contributing to nature-based solutions. It would be important to have the same understanding, in best case, one coherent, strong position as EBA community in the NBS debate and the nature-based solutions debate, which should, of course, be in line with the existing concepts and guidelines. Looking forward to the excellent presentations of this session, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to hand over back to the moderator.
Thank you, Harald, for those opening words setting the scene for today. And now we would like to start with our keynote sessions. And I would first like to invite Veronica Ruiz to us on the stage. Ms. Ruiz is working for the International Union for Conservation of Nature on ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. As the program manager for ECO-DRR, and Ms. Ruiz, you'll explain to us in a minute what that is. She supports IUCN's global work on nature-based solutions for societal challenges towards a coordinated approach to applying ecosystem management to climate change and disaster risk reduction. Ms. Ruiz also supports the expansion of IUCN Climate and Disaster Resilient project portfolio by facilitating collaborations plus trusted partnership building. Ms. Ruiz, we're looking forward to hearing from you about nature-based solutions beyond just another label tool.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tina. I think you can see my slides, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, but you are still in the last one. This is not what I was looking for. So, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me today for this, to sharing this day with you. So, well, nature-based solutions, we are listening the term nature-based solutions everywhere right now. Like Harald mentioned, there is a word that is being discussed within the international fora, for example, the climate COP, or in the framework, or in the context of the new global biodiversity framework. But nature-based solution is shifting the conservation paradigm to establish a second pillar. So we have a first pillar, which is conservation action for safeguarding nature, biodiversity, and flora and fauna. And now, what is new? So conservation action also that do what I have just mentioned, but also that provide tangible societal needs to address the specified challenges. So in doing so, we are extending the reach and relevance of conservation to human well-being in a more systematic way, based on evidence. But it's something that is really important, especially now that nature-based solutions is being used everywhere. We need to really put the point in mentioning that not all conservation actions are nature-based solutions, but the other way around, all nature-based solutions are based on conservation actions for protect, restore, or sustainable use. And where is this journey on nature-based solutions? So for IUCN, this journey starts with a very clear understanding of what it is an NBS and what is not an NBS, especially because these kind of concepts that are open-ended are very challenging to implement. So IUCN defined nature-based solutions back in 2016 during their World Conservation Congress in Hawaii. This definition was adopted by IUCN members, including state members. So simply put, nature-based solutions are solutions that require a healthy ecosystem which can produce goods and services for people without harming nature. The precision and progress of nature-based solutions has also got to go hand by hand and contribute towards a more resistant and sustainable future. So IUCN is working in clarifying and ensuring the right use of the concepts and to avoid the misuse of this concept that is being now used in different contexts. So why we are doing so? Because what we would like to allow is its right implementation and appropriation. So IUCN definition specifies 7 different societal challenges. Some of them need scaling up through innovative partnership and joint effort. As Harold mentioned, nature resolutions go beyond mitigation, even though climate mitigation is one of the societal challenges that the IUCN definition recognizes. So 7 societal challenges, including climate change adaptation and mitigation, disaster risk reduction, socioeconomic development, human health, water and food security, and also, and the most important, environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, 2 of the major threats that the human society is facing nowadays. So, as an umbrella term, nature-based solutions encompasses approaches of working with nature, such, for example, ecosystem-based adaptation, which is synonymous of nature-based solutions for adaptation. And also here we can find another type of approaches like ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, which is myself personally, I'm the program manager for IUCN. So these are approaches that are directly implemented to face disaster risk reduction and to cope with this challenge. As well, we can find ecosystem-based mitigation and other type of approaches, like, for example, even protected areas. So nature-based solution as an overarching concept can be used to support communication and mainstreaming of these different subsets across international, multilateral agreement, global frameworks, and their audiences. So far, it is still a bit challenging in integrating the term into different areas, like Harold mentioned as well. Sorry, I coming back to your words that you just mentioned earlier, but it's true. Nature-based solutions, we really tried to get it in the text at the COP26, but it wasn't the case. Similarly, is what we are facing with the global biodiversity frameworks. However, ecosystem-based approaches are well recognized in these 2 policy areas, especially EBA, who was coined in 2009 by CBD. And talking about approaches, also we talk about like what are the type of ecosystem where nature-based solutions can be implemented. And yes, forest always is the ecosystem that is coming up more and more. But nature-based solutions can be implemented beyond forests. We can work in mountains, shrubland, drylands. We can work with mangrove, coral reef, or even with soil. So that's why we always think about forest, because it is the ecosystem, the one that is more visible once going to the eyes. But nature-based solutions can be really applied through a diverse range of ecosystem. And I have been talking about definition. While clear definition is helpful, we need to be able to answer some questions. Like, for example, what is a measure of how well we have covered all the necessary bases? Or what we do need to improve when we are implementing nature-based solution? This is particularly important given that the majority of nature-based solutions implemented will not come from the conservation or natural resource sector. When we are working with nature-based solutions, we are working with a diverse range of stakeholders. We work with policymakers, decision makers, finance sector, economic sector, infrastructure sector. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, this is what it led to IUCN to develop the global standard for nature-based solution. This standard was developed through public consultation processes. And first of all, what we really want is to offer a practical guidance that will help with implementation. And secondly, what we really try is to avoid establishing a rigid threshold system, as this could be counterproductive to the uptake and accessibility of solutions. And this was a process where more than 800 experts were involved, coming from 100 countries worldwide. So therefore, this standard was designed as a facilitative tool with an incremental approach along scale. It guides the user on what has been achieved and where to take actions on the gap and shortfalls. The main application is for designing a solution, for supporting decision-making for investment and financing, and also for informing the scaling up of impact. So, going very briefly through the different 8 criteria that compose this standard, 8 criteria and 26 indicators, let me go quickly through them for you to understand. So criterion 1 is the basis of a solution. This is the well-defined problem, which is the societal challenge being addressed. It could be one societal challenge, as I mentioned before, or various ones. Here is very important, and when we come with the importance of bringing all stakeholders on board, this is where the standard is based on a strong human rights safeguard to make sure that all the affected parties, they are part of the process. Criterion 2 is about the scale, considering the risk and opportunities in the wider landscape or seascape. We may have an immediate or eventual impact on our intervention. We have to think about not only the horizontal or geographical scale, but also the economic scale or social scale. The criteria 3, 4, and 5 correspond to the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Environmental sustainable, socially equitable, and economically viable. But, however, it is really unrealistic to expect a triple bottom line win-win each time. We are not living on a perfect world. So that's why it's important to come up with a transparent governance system to set up a group of or a set of trade-offs that are balanced and choice that really need to be made for short and long-term gains. And this is very important. As I said, it has to be done through a transparent, equitable, and inclusive process, which is coming back with what I say, all the affected stakeholders really need to be part of the process. Then we have criterion 7, which is responding to the need for adaptive management, especially nowadays with a very variable climate. It's very variable so far at the present. And finally, this is the true potential of nature-based solutions that is realized through its long-term implementation at the scale and really embedding nature-based solutions into policy or regulatory frameworks. And as I mentioned previously, at the COP26, initially the term was integrated in the final decision, but then it suffered some modification and it wasn't included any longer. And similarly with the Global Biodiversity Framework, where still the MBS definition adopted by IUCN is not being recognized, let's say, yet. So this is very important. And the most important is to realize that by using and adopting the MBS standard of IUCN, you are also basing your intervention in a strong biodiversity, environmental, and human rights-based safeguards to make sure that all the stakeholders are part of the process, that the nature is not being harmed, but either any of the stakeholders that are part of this process. And for making sure that these standards is well used and is up to date and that all the parties interested and are involved, we are working in a governance system. It's a well-established governance system that initially, as you see up in the slide, there is the International Committee for the Standard, which was launched back in the 10th of December at the Climate COP. And then we are lucky to have one of the GIC, I don't know if it's previous GIC colleagues, Matthias Bertrand, and one of the members, key members of this international committee. But beyond the international committee, we have the user groups. It's like a community of practice for nature-based solutions, where people can exchange and can receive some information with regard to the standard. But finally, also the most important is the creation and setup of national and regional hubs that can really adapt the standard to the context of different regions, countries, etc. This is really important, and also keep building the capacities on nature-based solutions and beyond. So here we have a robust yet practical framework as a common basis in truly leveraging the potential of nature-based solutions. And IUCN looks forward to working together with all of you in doing so. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ruiz. That was very interesting. You might have some questions to Veronica Ruiz. How we will be doing it is that we will have another presentation from Judith Reise in a moment. And after that, we'll have a question and answer session to both of them. I'll just show you how to do that. So in case you haven't seen this yet, I'm just going to show my screen and show you the platform. One moment. Yeah, so there are a few different options. The one thing is, if you see this screen here, can you see in the top right hand corner there's a blue question mark? So if you click on the question mark, there's this Q&A thing that opens. And great, we already have one question here. So if you click on ask, you can post a question. And what's great is you can also like questions. If you say, hey, this is a question I also find really interesting, you can like it. If you're having problems with that, and perhaps there's some notification saying because of cookies it's not possible, what you can do is you can open it in a separate tab. It says up there, open Slido. This is this Q&A feature in a separate tab in the browser, and then it should work. Okay, great. So I'll just stop the screen share here. Great, and now I would like to introduce Judith Reise. So Judith Reise is a researcher at the Öko-Institute in Germany on energy and climate. Ms. Reise has studied biodiversity and global change ecology in Göttingen and Bayreuth, and her main research interest is the role of carbon-rich ecosystems for climate mitigation and biodiversity protection, as well as research related to LULUCF. Ms. Reise, I hand over to you for a presentation on nature-based solutions and global climate protection, and you're going to share with us some recommendations for international climate policy.
Yes, thank you very much, Tina, and thank you very much also for the opportunity to present our study here. And I'm just going to jump right into it. So this study that we recently published, and it's also available online, is part of a bigger study commissioned by the German Environmental Agency, and it's going to assess the market incentives to promote climate-friendly soil management. But here in this first publication, we were focusing on the nature-based solutions and the global climate protection. And we first developed a scientific basis to analyze nature-based solutions for climate mitigation. And we were basically summarizing and assessing scientific literature on the global potential of nature-based solutions and how they avoid, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and they store carbon. So yeah, Veronica basically introduced the whole concept of nature-based solutions, and we also related our definition and the characteristics mainly on the IUCN definition. So I won't go through it all again. But just to give you an idea, because we also came to the conclusion that some natural climate solutions like adding biochar into crop soils, which is famously introduced, we were not including in our assessment. And this is why biochar basically needs a continuous supply of biomass and energy. And this biomass could also be used by other organisms in the ecosystem, or even be used for other societal needs, like, for example, bioplastics and so on. Also, the ecological impact of biochar is not yet real clear on a bigger scale. So we have soil pH differences, we have pollutants that might be introduced or coal aerosols into the air. So the long-term effects on biodiversity and the whole ecosystem functioning are not yet well understood. So this is, for example, why we excluded biochar. The famous paper on natural climate solutions and their mitigation potential is provided by Griscom et al. You might be aware of this. And he said, and his colleagues, that about 37% of necessary CO2 mitigation potential could be delivered by 2030 due to natural climate solutions. And also Rowe et al. And colleagues came to basically similar figures until 2050, but also included technical solutions like bags and changes of diet, for example. We were going through major ecosystems, forests. We were looking at croplands, we were looking at grasslands and terrestrial and marine wetlands, as well as settlements, and we're screening the literature for potentials in measures that are related to NBS, and having our definition and our characteristics of NBS in mind, we were assessing and summarizing these potentials and evaluating it. And I want to give a brief example of one of the ecosystems that were already mentioned today very often, which are the forests. And why are forests so interesting? Because they have a large potential for climate mitigation, a huge sequestration of 16 gigaton per year, but they are also very vulnerable due to deforestation and degradation, which also costs 8 gigatons of emissions every year. And when we look at measures like afforestation, reforestation, which are also very famous and very well applied, yet we see that there are many different numbers out there. What are the actual potentials for climate protection? And Bastan et al., for example, gave a huge number of more than 700 gigatons, which could be achieved as climate mitigation until 2050. And Griscom really has a much, much lower potential. And why is that? Because the land that was selected for these measures really differentiated. So you cannot really consider all agriculture areas. So they were excluded in the Griscom study, while Bastan basically planted trees wherever it is physically possible. And this is, of course, not in the sense of an ecologically friendly measure to also ignore tree-free, naturally tree-free ecosystems like natural grasslands. But also Griscom et al. Included semi-natural grasslands in their assessment in Europe, for example, and those are very important features of our cultural ecosystem landscape and also very important for biodiversity protection. So if you exclude these 50 millions of semi-natural grasslands in Europe, you would also come up with a 5% lower mitigation potential for afforestation globally. So to sum up, for forest-related nature-based solutions, what we came across, which are very important issues to consider when we look at their mitigation potential. And first one I gave an example of is the land selection. So you have to consider effects through land use change and also the protection of species-rich grasslands, albedo effects in the northern parts, and also you should consider forest growth because their assumptions on carbon accumulation can differ quite a lot, and recent studies also lowered the potential because of a more defined carbon sequestration potentials. Also, the tree selection is very important. Are there native trees introduced? Are there structurally rich introductions? And do we have plantations or do we consider natural generations? And natural generations, of course, have a lot of ecological co-benefits as well. The forest management has to be taken into consideration. So what will be the harvest intensity and harvest cycles? And of course, if we come to avoided emission, it's very important to look at what are the baselines and what are the assumptions for future forest development. So to sum up all conclusions, looking at all the ecosystems, we found that the 24 gigatons of CO2 that could be achieved until 2030 each year, provided by Griscom et al., is reduced by at least 10% because we excluded biochar and grazing animal-related management measures from this potential, because they didn't fit into the definition and the characteristics of NBA. We also found that there are still some uncertainties when looking at mitigation potentials. So, for example, also limited data on the state of ecosystem. So what is the actual carbon content of the ecosystem? How much are they disturbed already? Which also determines what is the potential mitigation effect? What is their potential to store carbon in the future? Also, the influences of measures and disturbances, like, for example, progressing climate change on ecosystems, is not yet considered in these greenhouse gas dynamics and in the potential assessments. Also, carbon sequestration rates and their emission factors for measures as well as ecosystems are not totally understood and not really locally appropriately assessed yet. So there are also some limitations. And mostly in most studies, land use conflicts, political or socio-cultural restrictions for the measures are not yet always considered. So there's also a danger that we overestimate the total mitigation potential of nature-based solutions. But also some potentials might not yet even taken into account. For example, the protection of the ocean sediments, which also provides huge potentials, but also urban greening measures are not yet included in these bigger studies of global mitigation potentials. So all these uncertainties and risks that I just summarized should be considered when we design incentive schemes for NBS implementations. And we also conclude that the NBS is a very well framework to promote the implementation of conservation, restoration, and the sustainable use of resources. It provides the unique opportunity to integrate sustainable land use, climate change mitigation, and adaptation, as well as biodiversity protection. But therefore, we need a really clear understanding of the concept of NBS and strict environmental and social standards to implement these measures. And of course, last but not least, to have a successful implementation of NBS, we need to stop further degradation and destruction of ecosystems. And this also is very important, that we consider that NBS basically don't substitute rapid and emission reductions, but there are measures to implement and to achieve and to help us protect climate and to achieve climate adaptation. Thank you very much. And yeah, I'm looking forward to any questions or comments that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judith Reiser. Okay, so we've already had quite a few comments in the chat and a few questions to both of you. So let's have a look what's most liked here. So one question is, I'm wondering how the IUCN's NBS standards relates to the EBA criteria system developed by FIBA. Could someone comment on that? And just to say, we have a few questions, so if you can keep your responses short, that would be great.
Yes, so the FIBA in the FIBA EBA criteria, indeed, they were critical for the development of the standard, and we work very closely with colleagues like Ali Raza, who are pretty involved in FIBA. So some of the indicators that were developed, they were based also on how the feedback criteria were developed as well, notably for the adaptive management when it comes to climate change.
Great, thanks a lot. We have another question here, which is, why has there been opposition to using the term concept of NBS in COP26 output and the global biodiversity framework, as you mentioned? How can this be overcome?
Well, for the COP26, it wasn't an opposition, but then it gets the saying the decision gets more broad. But then the term nature was in there, which is, I mean, for a climate COP, it was like a very a milestone, a major milestone. In the sense with the CBD is much more clear. Nature-based solution hasn't been defined under a UN convention. However, the term nature-based solution has been also adopted already for IUCN members, which some of them they are state members and they say that are part of these conventions. So this is the major pushback, and also the fact of what I have been saying. Nature-based solution goes beyond mitigation, and it's still seeing nature-based solution as an excuse for keep releasing green emissions rather than it is not. It's like something nature-based solution should be complementary to cutting emissions. And also human rights, this is something that this is why it was a pushback from the civil society. However, in the standard, we have a specific criteria, number 5, which is for human rights and particularly indigenous peoples' rights.
Thank you. We have another question here. Can the global standard be used at 2 different stages of a project? Screening to choose the most relevant NBS, and then once we have selected an NBS.
The standard can be used whether if you are starting from zero, you want to develop your project. You can use it when you are monitoring your project to know whether you are implementing a nature-based solution or not. And also once the project is closed, in case you will like to upscale or replicate the same action. But the standard is not giving any specific solution, rather it is helping you in deciding what are the most appropriate solution that you have to implement.
Thanks a lot. And I'm seeing a lot more questions coming in here. There's also one to you, Judith Reise, saying, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Could you provide some detail on what were the data sources for calculating the potentials? And was it public data or direct measure? Judith, I was wondering, could you perhaps respond to that in the chat? Because I think it might be a bit much for now. So perhaps both of you, if you could have a look at the platform and see if you can provide some links for people or some responses directly, that would be really great. Because then I would like to hand over to our next speaker, Mauricio from Costa Rica, who has got up early today. So Mauricio Luna Rodriguez, one moment, is an advisor for GIZ at Euroclima. And he's got 20 years of international experience working on sustainability, climate change, and nature-based solutions in developing and developed countries across several continents. So, and Mauricio, I understand you will be speaking to us about the results of the analysis of NBS-EBA approaches in the updated NDCs in Latin America, a classification of NBS approaches in updated NDCs. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tina, and thank you for the opportunity. And I would like to thank the previous participants, Judith and Veronica, because it really sets the stage. It makes my presentation much easier because it pretty much what I'm going to present aligns very well with what they already presented. And I'm just going to make sure I keep track of time. So this is a classification of framework for NBS approaches in the updated NDCs. And my presentation is going to pay the attention on the structure of the classification. Later on, I will have the opportunity to present the results in one of the breakout groups. So The outline of my presentation is the following. First, some background on this. Then the definition of NBS for climate actions that were used, and some methodological aspects of this classification. Okay, so a little bit of background. First, as one should, we did some lead review on the nature for climate action, but we also interview some international experts. Some of them are actually here in this community of practice. We also interview government representatives from Latin American countries we work with who were updating the NDCs, and we also have been in touch with them after the NDCs were published, were submitted to the UNFCCC. So rather than a linear process, this has been more like cyclical. We also interview some practitioners that implement our projects in the region, and that's how we came up with the analysis of the NDCs using this framework that I'm going to present to you. So based on the IUCN definition, we conceptualize NBS for climate action as those that aim to protect, sustainably manage, or restore natural or modified ecosystems, specifically to mitigate, adapt, or reduce the risk associated with climate change, while of course like providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits, as has been discussed previously. So moving on to the classification of NBS in the updated NDCs. First, we wanted to see if either the term NBS or EBA was already incorporated in the NDCs, if it was explicit. If not, if nature was incorporated as part of the commitments. But we also wanted to see the linkages between the specific commitments of these new or updated NDCs with several international conventions such as the SDGs, but also biodiversity certification conventions, Sendai Framework, and Ramsar Convention. So the starting point was rather challenging. As you might know, NDCs are very diverse. So the entry point was different keywords that we were searching in the NDCs that you can see on the screen, and many others we discovered in the process of checking several NDCs from the region. More specifically, these allow us to classify the different commitments on either contributing to mitigation or adaptation, many of them in a synergic way, but also we put a lot of effort on analyzing those commitments that create the enabling conditions for the use of nature for climate action. Given the scope of the NDCs, many of the commitments are at a higher level political, let's say international commitment. Therefore, they do not necessarily specify actions on the ground always, but try to create the conditions to do that using nature. And I will give you more details about that in a second. Another very useful entry point that we use to analyze the NDCs was the linkage between these commitments and the development sectors. As you can see, we use like 12 different categories. And it was very useful on one hand because still most of the NDCs are negotiated with the different sectors when there is a participatory process, are negotiated with the different sectors, these commitments, but also the implementation of these commitments directly impacts different sectors. And we have some good surprises. For example, of course, agriculture, forestry, water are very present, but other non-traditional sectors such as energy, health, or even industry as well. At the heart of our classification is the typology of enabling conditions. This is based on a work that I did with my colleagues from IUCN previously. And then more specifically, we analyze if these commitments try to create new policies or enhance the existing policies. That's one category. If it aims to create new financial mechanisms or instruments as well. Also, many of them aim to provide capacity building, which is really important for NDC implementation. Others try to fill the gaps with information or technologies that are necessary for climate action. For MBS, it's very important also to have special planning, either marine or terrestrial areas. And of course, research, since MBS is very relies on a lot of data, information, and knowledge. On the other hand, based on the work of Chasson and colleagues, these are the colleagues from Oxford, we took the classic definition of protection, restoration, and management for climate action, but also we analyzed if there was a combination of the previous ones, which happened quite a few times in the NDCs, and some more novel approaches, such as the creation of new ecosystems by humans. Let's say this could be, for example, human-made wetland to control floods, and also the combination of this wetland with, let's say, restoration or sustainable use or protection of the catchment around this wetland is the last category. And moving on, we also try to assess the different potential ecosystems where these commitments can be implemented, as it was mentioned, going beyond forest. So we incorporated coastal and marine ecosystems, agro ecosystems, urban ecosystems, and so on. And also we assess if some of these commitments could be implemented in multiple of these ecosystems, which was the case. To wrap it up, as it was already mentioned by my previous colleagues, Judith and Veronica, it's very important to assess the contribution or the impact on biodiversity. So we were inspired on the global standard of IUCN, and this is rather complex to assess on a policy level. Therefore, we came out with a traffic light system in which those commitments that are detrimental to biodiversity get a red light. Those who, in which we don't have enough information to assess their contribution or their impact, get a yellow or orange light. And many of them are too broad to have a final assessment, many of these commitments. Or if it is clear that this, for example, protection of ecosystems is going to contribute to biodiversity as part of the climate action plans, then we gave these commitments a green light. Similarly, it's very important to incorporate vulnerable groups in relation to nature, of course, including indigenous groups, local communities, but also gender issues. And we came out more recently with a very similar assessment with the three colors. If the NDCs as a whole do not mention vulnerable groups in connection to nature, then we give this NDC a red light. If it mentions these groups, but it doesn't provide enough details on how the participation process is going to take place, we give an orange or yellow light. And then if it provides enough details on how these groups are going to be incorporated in the process, we give them green light, as you can see. And this is also based on some work that we have done in the region through the implementation of our projects and the participation of indigenous groups. Okay, so here are some references of our work. And thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to keeping this discussion.
Thank you very much, Mauricio, also for joining us in Costa Rica. It's still, I would say, quite early, right? If you have some questions to Mauricio, you will understand in a breakout session later on, I understand, no? At 2:15 Central European Time on NDC NAP. So you can meet Mauricio there. Thanks you.
I will share the results of the analysis indeed.
Great, thank you. Okay, so now we come to the marketplaces. So this is a chance for you to roam around, and I'm just going to show you quickly how this works. So one moment, I will share my screen. Here we go. So one thing perhaps to mention is if you're here on the agenda slide, you might be wondering where the tab is. So if you have it as large as I have it, I'm just going to open this a little bit. You can click up here, no? And then you have the other tabs. So you go to Marketplace, and here is the chance for you to choose which ones you want to go to. So what you do is you choose one, you say, okay, I'm going to go here, gender-oriented ecosystem-based adaptation. Then you need to go to the bottom, and what's important is, and it says it here, is that you have to click on this box. No? So it might be not so straightforward. So you choose your topic, you click on the box, and then you have to do another click in order to enter the session, right? So Marketplace, choose a topic, scroll down, click on the box, and then enter the session. Yeah, and the idea with the marketplaces, as we mentioned before, is that you roam around. We'll be sending you a notification, letting you know after 10 minutes saying, no, now's an opportunity to change, but it's up to you. You can also stay longer somewhere. And here are all these topics. And you can see there's a wide range of topics from integrated design, from macroeconomic planning and gender, etc. So I wish you a great time. And just to let you know, after that, we'll be having a break. So after the marketplace, we have a 15-minute break, and then we'll see you again in the live session at 2 p.m. Okay, have a good time. Bye. Hello, everyone. I hope you had a good short break. And actually, I hope you had a good market stall sessions. We had interesting discussions in ours. So you had the chance to move around different topics. And now, after the break, we are coming to the breakout sessions. And I'd like to explain to you what that is and how it works. So the breakouts are a bit different to the market stalls where you just moved around. So the breakouts are sort of sessions where we'd assume that you would stay there the whole time. And we have lots of exciting topics, and we'll have some pitches on that in a minute. But first, I'll show you how to get there. So I'm just going to share my screen and show you the platform. Here we go. So here's the platform. No, you go to agenda, and then if you scroll down here, you can see, where are we here? At the breakout. Sorry, I went a bit too far. So here we go. And then you can choose a breakout session, for example, if you want to join the one here on agroecology. And then there will be a button here that will allow you to join. Yeah, that's right. And so now it would be nice to hear from the colleagues here some pitches of which breakouts you can expect. We have 2 rounds, so we have an hour now where you can choose between 3 different breakouts. Then we have a 15-minute break, and then we have another round where you can choose from more breakouts. So I'd like to invite Ulrich Kindermann to let us know what will happen in synergies between adaptation, biodiversity, and mitigation, examples from NDC, NAP, and NBSAP.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So synergies between climate and adaptation and biodiversity, everyone is talking about them. And now that if you look at national policies on mitigation, so nationally determined contribution, NDC, adaptation, NAP, or also now at NBSAP. Sorry about that. Sorry, someone tried to come in here. Apologies for that. So yeah, we have much discussion about synergies, but what is explicitly, we believe they're not fully harnessed. So, and we want to look deeper first by an input by the global by the IKI project for the design to support the design and implementation of the new global biodiversity framework, BioFrame, and then by expert from conservation and development on work which is going on in these programs together with the Nairobi Work Program and other experts. And if you want to learn more about synergies, we'd be happy to have you in session 4 right after this break, after these pitches. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrich. The next one we have in our list is Silvia Vikander, sharing with us about tools, navigating in the many EBA tools.
Thanks, Tina. Yes, as the title kind of says it all. So I'm sure you have, many of you have been in the situation where you've been looking for guidance, a tool, or a methodology that can support you in your EBA work. And then you've started a search and either realized, that there's an overwhelming number of tools out there. They're scattered across the entire internet, or maybe you haven't found anything suitable and you're just wondering, where do I go next? How do I deal with this? So in our session Tools, we'll be introducing you to the online EBA Tools Navigator, which is a searchable database and has been designed exactly to help you with these kinds of issues. So how do you find the tools that actually can help you in your EBA work? So we'll, in the session with colleagues from WCMC and GIZ, we'll be looking at the different features and functionalities of the Navigator. I'm going to spotlight a couple of tools that have been specifically designed for EBA. And you'll also be hearing about a user experience of actually applying a few tools in the context of an EBA project in Central Asia. So putting the tools into practice. So yes, come and join us in that breakout session if you want to learn more about tools and the EBA Navigator.
Thanks a lot, Silvia. And the last option to choose from in this first session will be presented by Harald Lossack about agroecology as climate adaptation strategy in agro-ecosystems.
Thank you very much. Why is everyone talking about agroecology? Well, the global food system did not eliminate hunger and contributes to increasing levels of malnutrition. Agriculture is both a casualty of and a driver of climate change. Achieving climate-resilient food systems means transforming food systems, working at different scales, and cooperating among sectors and communities of practice. We will discuss the role of agroecological practices as an ecosystem-based strategy. We are convinced that agroecology and ecosystem-based adaptation are two sides of the same coin. Looking forward to exciting presentations on agroecology and a case study from Mexico, we expect a dynamic and lively discussion. Agroecology is highly promising, yet insufficiently acknowledged EBA strategy in agricultural landscapes. Come and join us.
Thank you, Harald. Oh, I can already see it'll be hard to choose here. So those were the 3 sessions that are taking place now from 1:10 until 2 p.m. Central European time. Then we have a 15-minute break, and then we have the next round of sessions from 2:15 until 3:15 CET. And we will not come back together in the live stream, but you can go after the break, you can go directly to the next breakouts. So we'd like to hear some from the others about what will happen then. So Louise, can you share with us about what will happen in EBA in the IKI interface projects, working together on implementing and mainstreaming EBA?
Yeah, thank you, Tina. So this is going to be a session for everyone who's either working for or interested in the IKI interface projects, and specifically their engagement with EBA. We will use the space for a combination of inputs and exchange on topics such as the role of the interface projects for EBA, upscaling and financing EBA, or capacity development for EBA. We will also talk about specific needs for support that is linked to these themes. You can look forward to inputs from the ICI, IUCN, the GIZ South Africa Climate Support Program, and others. Also, the session will be our kickoff for future needs and exchange on EBA from the side of the interface projects. So be sure to join us if this is of interest to you.
Great, thanks a lot. And now let's hear from Irinda Pubilpanen on climate justice, putting on a climate justice lens. How can we ensure just EBA on the ground?
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Tina. Indeed, so in this session on climate justice, we will be unpacking why we need to talk about justice in the context of ecosystem-based adaptation to ensure EBA is effective and inclusive. For this, we will touch upon the key concepts of climate justice, examples of challenges and success cases of nature-based solutions for adaptation, and dive deeper into the power dynamics between different actors in the field, all with the aim to jointly identify ways to improve the justice dimension in our daily EBA work on the ground. We will start off with input from our two experts, Dr. Maria Kaufmann and Ms. Elizabeth Tipper-Wong, who are experts in the field, and will continue afterwards with a lot of question and answers. And we also have a section of this session dedicated to a discussion with you, where we have actually some questions for you, where we want to hear of your experiences in justice topics inside the context of EBA. So we really look forward to having you, and we hope to have a very engaged discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Irinda. And last but not least, the third option in this second session on breakouts, Ulrich Kindermann on EBA national policies, NDC and NAP.
Yes, thank you. So I already mentioned that nationally determined contributions, they have just been updated, NAP are still in process. And there's a lot of EBA in these documents. And in this session, we'll look at how, one part will be on the process, like what can we learn from how to update, how the update of the NDCs have went. And the second part, this will be Michel opinion from the supporting the Paris Agreement SPA program. And then we'll have Mauricio Luna again, which most of you saw in the plenary, with an input on the EBA content, on classifying, on NBS in Latin America, with some specific examples on nature-based solutions in Latin American NDC. And we hope to see you to discuss more about this in session 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrich. Yeah, so as mentioned, 2 sessions of 45 minutes, and in each session you can choose between 3 different options. One thing that's important to highlight is that the breakouts will also be recorded. So they take place as Microsoft Teams calls, like you just had in the marketplace, but these ones will be recorded and published on the YouTube channel of the EBA community. So if you would not like to be recorded, turn your camera off and don't say anything. Yeah. The other thing that we would like to highlight is, it's an interactive MS Teams call. It's absolutely recommended if you're having network problems, turn off everything else, turn off your email program, anything else you have had open. And if you would like to speak, you can raise your hand. There's an electronic hand button, and that will also sort the hand raising chronologically. So those who raise the hand first will be up the top. That might be helpful also for those holding the session. Okay, that's it. Then I would say have a great time. Remember, take your own break at 2 p.m., 2 until 2:15. Then join the second breakout, and then we'll see each other at 3:15 for the closing here in the live stream. Have a good time. Hello, everyone. So we're finally getting to the end of the conference. I hope you had an excellent time like I did. I really enjoyed joining some sessions. I just joined a session on climate justice, super interesting. And I think what was really an overarching topic was the integration and the intersectionality with other topics. So I think it's really interesting to see how it's coming together with agroecology, climate justice, gender, etc. So people are not working in silos anymore, but rather building bridges. And that's been really wonderful to experience, also people getting together, even in small sessions with just a few people exchanging, oh, what are you working on? What are you working on? Really great. We would love to hear from you also. And as I mentioned before, if you look up the top, there's a tab for feedback. So please, you could also do it right now. If you could fill that in, it's very, very easy. That would be really helpful. And also, if you want to, here next to the chat is the Q&A section. So if you want to, you can also leave comments for us there. That would be really nice. So what were your impressions? What did you take with you from the conference, or let's say the community of practice workshop? Yeah, and I would now like to hand over for the last closing words to Harald, who is the head of the team who's been setting all this up. I think they've been working for months on this. It's been a lot of hard work there, Harald. So over to you for some closing words.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. Yes, on behalf of the organizers of this sixth EBA COP, I would like to thank all the participants for the excellent and dedicated contributions and discussions that we had during the last 2 days. Like in the past COP sessions, this has been a tremendous experience. We have seen very clearly the growing commitment for EBA in the context of the multiple crises due to climate change and biodiversity loss. We heard encouraging contributions from decision makers and practitioners on how to tackle the challenges in cross-sector